Good evening, everyone. I hope you can hear me loud and clear. My name is Jeremy, and I will be your host for the evening. Before we start today, I just want to enlighten you all and let you all know a few house rules. When you enter the meeting, we would kindly request you to please turn off your microphone and your video, put it off and mute until question and answer time. Then we will give you an opportunity. However, we would prefer if you can send your questions to Slido, so that what you need to do is go to slido.com and type in hashtag what's next #2, and then you will be able to enter your questions there, and we will be able to view it, and I will put it forward to Dusty during the call, at the end of the call rather. So please send all your questions to slido.com. I will send the link on the Zoom chat during the webinar. All right. So this evening, we have Dusty Alahakoon, who is the CEO of Heineken Lanka, also the chairman of Next Campus and lead tutor on the Next faculty for the MBA program. So there is a lot of experience that comes his way, and he has been lecturing in change management and strategic leadership for many years and research methods. So before we start, I just want to enlighten you all and bring attention to some of our partners. So our collaborative partners on this series is Irfan and his team at IQ, Atik, Crystal and the Peppercube team, Banura, Dilanjan, Shenali and Varsha at Thivra, and also Tilak and Kapila from Dialogue. So ending with that, I would, with no further ado, like to introduce you to Dusty Alahakoon, who will take on from here and take you all through the webinar. Dusty, over to you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Jeremy. Thank you for that nice introduction. And welcome everyone for What's Next webinar today. I think this is our second webinar today, and we are taking you through a series called What's Next. And when I looked at the participants today, I saw quite a lot of thought leaders and also representing a wide range of industries. So first of all, thank you very much for joining us today. We thought we'll have a discussion about endings and beginnings, mainly the human aspect of change, and how do we cope and how do we renew from where we are. I think a lot of people like to talk about strategy and they like to talk about KPIs, but rarely about people and about feelings. And most of them believe that people leave their feelings at home and bring a very KPI mentality to work, which is, I think, not true. And but I want to first congratulate that you're willing to explore this messy, not so nice area, and also confront change, because that's what we are faced with today. So what I will do is that I have a few PowerPoint slides which I will share, and also I'll talk through that. And the whole idea is, this is not going to be a therapy session as such, but like to address a few key areas we face as people in this in the current situation. The belief is, if we understand what people go through, we may be able to handle this situation better and bounce back better, sooner, faster, and more effectively. So what I'm trying to do is, I'm trying to set a context to a discussion about endings and beginnings. And then I like to have a discussion rather than making it a more one-way communication. So the whole program will be, I'll talk for about 30 minutes, max 40. Make sure I will not go over 40 minutes. Got a few slides, don't have many slides, but few slides to bring my thoughts together. And then we'll have a discussion. And I want to warn you right at the beginning that I might not have all the answers. That's why I said it's a discussion, because it's a time that we don't have answers. I think when we talk about this change, everyone's saying it's a new world. That's like a catchphrase today. People are looking at a new world. And also, how big is this change? I try to shift the world and show that it can be a very big change. And also, I think you know about this. You know about the change, but let's discuss a little bit about the nature of the change. And by any measure, I think we can tell you that this could be the biggest change ever that we have witnessed so far in our lifetimes. And there could be bigger ones in the future, but we don't know. But this is the biggest change that we have witnessed so far in our lives. And some say the worst could be yet to come. I hope that is not true, but it could be as well. And the other thing is, when you compare with sudden changes like a tsunami or some attack, this is a kind of an agonizing change, prolonging compared to a sudden change, which is why people are finding it so difficult to take this and bounce back. But at the same time, some people are saying that this is a good change, good for the environment, good for the society to have a reset. So there are some differing views, but overall, one thing that we can agree is we have lots of challenges. So on one side, there is a health and humanitarian challenge. On the other side, there is certainly a business challenge that we are faced with. So today we are going to focus more on the business challenge that we are faced with, and see how, as businesses, how can we bounce back? How can we bounce back more effectively? But when you look at this change, look at the dimensions of this change. There is a social change, there is a geopolitical change, uh, economy, massive change, trade, technology. You look at any sector, this permeates, this goes through every possible sector that we see today. And this change is challenging the fundamentals that we believed. The things that we thought will never change or took for granted is being shaken today with this change. So if we call this the biggest change in our history or in our lifetime rather, my question is, will the same approach that we had in 2019, will it work for us? Will the same outlook, mindset work for us, or do we have to take a look at things in a more different perspective? And do we need a set of new tools? And most importantly, do we need a new mindset? So, uh, so that's a big challenge in front of us. But the nice thing is, everyone knows about this. And but the question is, why doesn't it work in most instances? That's, I think, the pivotal question that we have to ask today. In a funny way, if we ask who wants change, I think everyone puts their hand up saying, yeah, change is okay. But if we ask the question, who wants to change, then all the hands go down and you don't see the audience being so active, because Lots of people don't want to change, and that's quite understandable. There is a reason for that. The reason is generally, here we need to understand two key words that I'm going to use in my discussion. One is change, other one is the transition. Now, change is an event. It could be working from home, the events that we go through. It could be Easter bombings, it could be the tsunami. It is the change, the event that happens outside. And events can be triggered by many reasons, but events happen outside. Transition is how we as humans adapt inside, or how do we reorient ourselves to that change. So it's a more internal process that we go through. And when you look at change and transition, change is very fast. It is out there, visible. But the transition tends to be relatively slow, rather slow, and it happens within us. And sometimes we may not be able to see the signs of that transition. But there is a big confusion about this transition, and also there is a confusion about this change. Some think it's the same thing, and some people want to completely ignore the transition part that they see. There are two lines on my screen. Let me see whether I can take it off. Okay, what are these two lines? This one tick. Okay, I can't get rid of the lines. That's okay. So the whole idea is, how do we understand both this change and the transition, and how do we try to manage this? My question there is, or my idea there is, sometimes you get a letter from the CEO, or you get a voice clip from the board of directors. Is that alone enough to take people through this? Is it alone enough for people to see the light? I'll talk about the emotions of these people a little later in the next slide. But these letters and these things can trigger enormous amount of emotions amongst our team. So that's something that we need to be aware of, right? The whole idea is, we don't stop at that letter, or we don't stop at that voice clip, but how do we take it through right to the end and make sure that people transition the way we are looking at. So in that instance, separating this change and transition is very important, and treat it like two separate areas for us to look at. Now, the best way to talk about this, I like to use some theory. It kind of helps us to create a structure or a backbone for our discussion, and it can create a picture for you better than I describe. Now, if you look at this, Bridger's model, William Bridger's model, on the x-axis you have time, and on the y-axis you have the percentage or amount of people. And now this is valid for any major change like what we are experiencing right now. And if you look at the first part, it starts with the ending. It starts with letting go. we need to let go how we behaved earlier in office, meetings, the social distance. We never had that word before, right? We need to let go certain things. Some people have to let go their career, let go salaries, let go leave. Lots of things to let go. Certain freedom to work, budget cuts. So there is a lot of letting go, ending that happens during a time like this. And I think it's very, very hard for all of us. And no means it is easy. Then you see in the middle a neutral zone. Probably this is like a vacuum between the end and the new beginning. And people typically float during this time. And I would also call it, it's a quite a risky or a dangerous zone because people are not clear about what's happening, and there is dead silence. I mean, as you know, when you send out a letter saying there's a salary cut or we are doing these measures, there is dead silence in the company. And you will not see any symptoms of aggression or resistance during this time because it's all underneath malignant below the surface that you will see. But there is a lot of anxiety among people during this time. And of course, needless to say that productivity is quite less. And the other funny thing is, interesting thing is, old weaknesses can come into light. This is the time they call Machang and say, look, what's happening? What should we do? Should we resist this? So there is another underground thing happening during the neutral zone. And practically speaking, we need to keep the neutral zone as narrow, as small as possible. But the challenge here is when people work from home, how much control do you have to keep this natural zone together? It's quite a big challenge. Then comes the new beginning. This is the new norm that everyone is talking about. How do we embrace that new norm, and how people will slowly embrace it? But I want to highlight an important fact here. If you take any point of time, letting go, neutral zone, and the new beginning, all three are present, but in different proportions. So that means even at the new beginning, there is still residue of the ending. There is still residue of the neutral zone. This is why you find 6 months, 1 year down the line, people are still behaving in the old way, and we get surprised about it, but that is true because some the residue they carry with them. I want to point 3 points here, A, B, and C. I want to I want you to reflect, where are you on this? Are you at point A? Are you at point B? Are you at point C? Uh, it depends where you are at this time. And have you got communications from your company? Have you heard anything about the company? Have you got a letter from the CEO? No letter. Both can be a reason for you to be in the neutral zone, right? So it depends where you are. But the question or the challenge is, how do we get to point C fastest? How do we get to point C with minimum damage? Now that's what we call a very, very successful change program. But as you know, 80-90% of change programs typically fail because we don't give enough importance to this transition or what people go through. So this bridges model can come out in different shapes. The ending losing can get longer, neutral zone can get longer, new beginning can get longer. More we lose time, we lose resources and we lose energy in this process. So, so you will have a real competitive advantage if you can take your employees to point C quite fast, but it is quite challenging. But to see how we can do that, let's look at some of the emotions that people go through in this letting go, ending, neutral zone, and also in the new beginning. I thought this is quite interesting. It has a lot of details in it, but let's look at it. Bottom, we have time here, and here we have the productivity, and the dotted line we have is the normal productivity. And here, this is the ending that we have. Look at the typical signs of ending. Shock. First point is shock. People are shocked about this pandemic. People are shocked about it. People, there is disbelief. Then comes uh, denial. Remember when the country was given holidays on 16th, and when we had curfew on the 20th, people had a scenario: 2nd April we can open, 7th April we can open, 20th April we can open. There is denial to what's happening now. There is denial about things will change, because that's because we don't want to let go what we have inside in terms of behaviors and emotions. Both we don't want to let go. That's the main reason for denial. Then comes the CEO letter. Then comes the CEO letter or no letter. That meets with some anger. Some people ask, I worked for this company for 20 years, and is this what I'm getting right now? Is this the thank you that I'm getting for the 20 years? And then you have that I'm getting for the 20 years. And then you have a lot of frustrations and during this time, and and apathy. You don't want to do anything. Now, these are the kind of emotions that you will see. But the difficult part is, during this ending time, people sometimes show these, sometimes they hide these feelings, because they feel, I can't be vulnerable in my company. If I'm vulnerable in my company, I'll be seen as a weak person. I can't have this conversation with my boss. But the reality is, boss is going through the same shock, denial, anger, and apathy as much as you do. Everyone's going through this, because right now we don't know where we will land and what is that bottom level before we recover. So then comes the neutral zone. There is a lot of confusion, because we don't know where we are heading, but we know that we have departed from where we are, and there is a lot of confusion there, and also questions, a lot of unanswered questions, and nobody can answer those questions. And there is some passive aggression amongst everyone. There is a lot of turmoil within people. Then, if all goes well, you slowly start having some positive news. And there is still, even if there is positive news, there is listlessness. I don't want to do anything. I mean, I'm fed up, right? And then slowly they start engagement, excitement, and then come to high energy. So this is the natural curve that people go through. And that's why I always say, one letter, one comms may not be enough, and over communicating during a crisis is so important. Hitting them with the same message in 3 different angles, because the way they perceive, if you're in ending stage, or if you're in neutral zone, or if you're in new beginning, they will see the CEO letter or the message very differently. And also, as a group, your teams within the organization can be in different places of this curve or this journey. Different people can be at different levels. So you'll have to understand where are these people, and then have your plans. The whole question is your internal comms and internal engagement addressing this curve? Or is it just that here is the new way of working, we are taking leave, we are taking a salary cut, and then we are moving, everything seems okay, we will tell you the next steps. Now, what is this new norm or the new beginning that we're talking about? I have no answer to that. But there was a HBR article published on 10th of April, preparing your business for a post-pandemic world. Now, in that HBR article, they spoke of 5 P's. What they did was they took the Henry Mintzberg's 5 P's and turned it to post-pandemic world in a very creative way. And they said the 5 P's are position, what type of position your company wants to take after the crisis. Plan, do we have a plan to get there? Perspective, how do we see the world and how do we see ourselves? Projects and preparedness. Projects are what are the things that you need to do, and preparedness is how prepared is our team to do this. So again, the 5 P's: position, plan, perspective, projects, and preparedness. And if you look at the last 3, perspectives, projects, and preparedness, is all about people. If your people are disengaged, if your people are not ready, the perspective they have about themselves and how they see themselves and how they engage in projects, especially working from home, and the preparedness might be at a low level. And there was another HBR article on the same day, 10th of April. It said, we need imagination now more than ever. We need imagination more than ever. And they did this article with BCG. And they surveyed 250 multinational companies. And they found bulk of the companies are still responding to the crisis, and very few are looking at rebound plans. Responding to the crisis, saying we'll do these measures, but rebound plans are yet to come. And people play a big part in those rebound plans because they are the ones who will do the projects for you, new projects for you, and they need to have that preparedness and they need to have that perspective about the company. So I feel that the last 3 P's, perspective, projects, and preparedness, HR has a massive intervention in companies to do. So it's both the plan, what, and the how that should come together. So when we look at this transition, sometimes we look at the transition from the wrong side. Now on my left hand side is self transformation, and in the middle is transforming teams, and my right hand side is transforming organization. Actually, this moves from the left to the right. Transform self, transform my team, transform the organization. But sometimes companies start from the right hand side and they think that yeah, we can straight away transform the organization, send a letter, send a comms, and the organization will be energized on the new projects, which is very hard to believe. And I think today's audience, we have people who will make this transition, also people who will go through this self transformation. So I thought it's important for both audiences to look at this. How do you transform from an individual standpoint? How do I transform first before I move to the teams and to the entire organization? Okay, and So this means I think we need to make sure that we have a handle on this transition, and uh, leaders may be very clear in their minds about the change, but that doesn't go down well to the masses at all. Best thing is when you meet up or virtually play Chinese whispers and see a very simple message that goes through people, what changes it goes through until it reaches the final point. The other question is, are top teams, the directors, boards, and the management teams, are they going through self-transformation today? Because I think, please forgive me for saying this, they could be the most rigid people around in an organization, not the trainee who joined 3 months ago who says, wow, this is how the company works, I'm okay for that. But I think the top teams really need to take the change through. So start from a self transformation and then move to the teams and the organizations. And if you start from the wrong end, trying to transform the entire organization, you may find that you're alone there and people are still in the ending or in the neutral zone. So what I'm trying to say is the new rebound plan, strategy and the mindset should go hand in hand, not one or the other. So I would rather like to replace the word or with and, because it's both strategy and and uh, and also mindset. So this brings to my last slide. Uh, yeah, this brings to my last slide. Uh, People often ask, all this is so good. We now understand what change is and what transition is, and we understand the transition curve, the ending, neutral zone, and the beginning. Now, how do we do this? What are the tools available? Right? How do we do this? I think this transforming self is about basics. How do we get back to basics? But done very well, taken very seriously. I think it applies the same with COVID-19. I think the first time I mentioned that word, I wanted to avoid that word during this call today. Uh, the solution is washing hands. I mean, we are faced with a world pandemic and the world has come to a standstill. And the answer is washing hands with ordinary soap. So sometimes we also have very simple solutions, but people disregard them, saying that they are too simple and they don't understand the power of simplicity in changing. Uh, there are quite a few activities that people can go through when they go through different phases of transition. But the most basic ones are uh, being a part of good communications. That means company communicates to you and you communicate with the company, and also that engagement, having a true conversation with each other. I mean, we find it very difficult to have a true conversation with people because we limit ourselves to KPIs and strategies and action plans, and we don't see feelings and emotions in those strategies and action plans. And uh, I found this start, stop, continue a very powerful tool. I had the privilege and the opportunity to uh, do a short course at Harvard, and this is something that I came out with, and this is something that they really go by, right? And they say everyone, every year, do these activities: start, stop, continue. This is about. Uh, I wouldn't even tell you to type this. Take a piece of paper and write it, scribble it down, cut it, rewrite it. That is self transformation because putting something on paper is good enough for you to take a load off your mind and put it on a paper and say, it's a little away from me right now. So these type of very simple tools can start the transition. Talk about, what do I want to let go? What do I want to stop doing? What do I want to let go? What am I ending? What am I starting? Right? What am I starting? And of course, through any crisis, there is very good things for you to continue. It's not to say that everything that we have been doing is rubbish and here is the new menu card. No, not like that. Certainly, there is such a lot of good that we can carry, but certainly there is some things to be ended and new things to be embraced. But the question is your backpack full so that you can't embrace the new norm? So that's the key question. And certain rituals in the company can bring people together and allow them as teams to end it. Sometimes as a team, you write down, what do you want to end? What do you want to begin? And the ending, you can crush it, you can tear it, you can burn it symbolically to say, we are doing away with these behaviors and emotions. Might not be simple as that, but you might have to have a new language where you remind people constantly about how do we do this on a daily basis. So that's what I wanted to do, really set the context for you about the human side of this change and how do we start or prepare ourselves to rebound or recreate our new norm or new future. So I think it's important to understand the change and the transition and how people go through the transition curve, what type of emotions they have, may be hidden, may be quite visible, but important for us to focus through our comms and engagement plans, and start transforming by yourself. Especially for top teams, the message is to start changing yourself before you change the teams and the organization. So that's the kind of setting that I want to have. And now I would like to open this for discussion. And also, you might have some specific instances or examples that you might have. And I said very sincerely at the beginning, I may not have answers, but I might have some thoughts about it, or I might have some ideas about it. It might not answer your question entirely because we are in a very unknown period. So thank you very much. Now I hand over to Jeremy for him to open it for questions.
Hi, Dusty. Thank you very much for that. All right, so let me just get straight into the questions. We have a question here. How do we restart projects that we were forced to stop as a result of work from home, especially when we have invested in these projects?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. But my reaction to that is that project valid in the new era? You may be in love with that project that you invested time, money, effort in 2019, and it may be nearing completion for all that matter. But the question is that project relevant? If it is relevant, by all means, I think you can energize the team and show the importance of that project and connect with them as a team virtually, which is quite tough, and carry on. But what I hear is many companies are having lots of virtual projects, and there is a lot of success right now, although they can't get together physically. Yeah.
Thank you, Dusty. We have another question. This is with regard to what happens when we go back to the office and when we go back to work. And if you're involved in a sales role, how do you encourage your staff to communicate physically with clients, especially if there is some concern about contracting the virus?
Yeah, it's actually for question for more the people and safety team in those companies. What type of precautions you want to take, and what type of interactions you have with your customers. I think today we are in an era that a lot of the things can be done via telephone or online with customers. But certainly in FMCG sales, there is a trend that you visit the customers a couple of times a month or a couple of times a week and have a very close engagement with them. But I think people will understand if you don't do that right away, and I think there'll be more measures coming through social distancing and also the kind of precautions that you have to take when you visit. But certainly, I can say for the frontliners, it's a quite a challenging time, and I think sales is about to transform itself, how we engage with customers and how we work with them. But certainly, I can really empathize with that question. The kind of risks that the salespeople will face out there in the market.
All right, we have another question. Uh, it reads: in a company, people are the lifelines and the heart of the organization that drives change. Did our leaders set the right tone and moral to recover after COVID-19? And I believe this is with regard to country leaders.
Okay, I think I'll focus on more company leaders. Um, Country leaders, I think let's keep that aside. But if you look at company leaders, uh, they tell in communications that people are the key. Human resources are so important for us. They are our heart and soul. They use very different nice words, and also say at the bottom, your leave is cut and your salary is cut, and this is how we are going to do. But I'm not saying that we should not do any of those measures, but how do we communicate? How do we get people ready for this? And how do we take people through change? I have also seen companies, employees come up and say, look, we like to work for 50% less salary. I have no problem because still our heart is with the company. That's the level of engagement that companies need to develop. And now is the time for companies to pull up those uh, climate surveys and the engagement plans and all the stuff that they had earlier and see what's our engagement level. Should we have a different approach at this time to connect with our team and not lose their heart during this time? So if you lose their heart, and if that transition curve is very deep, then the recovery is very difficult for many of the companies.
Thank you, Dusty, for that. Before we go to the next question, I just want to remind everyone that they are free to send in their questions. Just log into slido.com and type in hashtag what's next number 2, and then you will go to a page with all the questions, and you can enter your question there, and you can mention your name, or else you can go as anonymous. That's fine by us. All right, Dusty. Another question from one of our attendees, which is, from your experience, what methods would you recommend that we could follow to send out a positive message to the organization?
I think personally, I have come through a very big change in the last 1 year. I think there are few ingredients there. One is, first thing is, I think the messaging should come from the leaders, and the messages should be quite authentic. Uh, I would take the word quite, they should be authentic. Because if there is no heart in the message, then people will see through the message, because some will say, you waited for this opportunity to do these changes. I mean, there has to be a genuine reason, and that genuineness and the authenticity should come through your communications. The second thing is, lots of people still stick to English communications in some of the A and B type companies. Very important to get your local language communication to the masses, rather than them hearing it from another person or a translation. And the third thing is, I think, multi-channel communication. Stand in front of them and talk. Today we have workplace and many other methods. We have Zoom, we have Teams. You can say what you have to say very clearly. You can have written communications, you can have videos, you can have many other modes of communication today. And it's good to have few levels, but try and avoid the levels if you can. If you have some important messages, try to give it to them directly, so that the loss in translation will be minimal. I think that's what I can say to that.
Thank you very much, Dusty, for that. We have another question from Heshani. This question, it says, what will be the new areas of skills the employers will need or require in the future for its employees?
Sorry, Jeremy, you have to ask that question again. I was reading this, one of the comments.
No worries. So the question reads, what will be the new areas of skills the employers will require in the future from its employees?
I think certainly that HBR article said imagination, creativity. These are new skills that people will have to develop. And also, how do you have authentic connections, working from home, working from remote locations virtually? How do you have those connections with people and yet maintain that productivity? So I think creativity, working with others, this whole human skill, working with others, and technology. I think these are emerging skills. And the interesting thing is, when we look at World Economic Forum skill list for 2025 or 2030, those can be brought forward, because we were all thinking that digital transformation will happen, and it's a reality in 2025. And I have seen lots of WhatsApp going around saying, who did the digital transformation? It's COVID-19. So there is some truth in that, because these type of breakpoints, I would call it a real breakpoint, brings these new challenges, and what we thought will happen in 2025, 2030 might be preponed to 2021. So I think the skills like being technology savvy, right? Ability to work with people, understand their emotions, and creativity, imagination. These are the, I think, the new skill sets that will be needed. But I am talking from the current viewpoint. This will become clearer in the next weeks and months to come.
Thank you very much, Das, for that. This question is a bit of a marketing related question. It's asking about your opinion on what you think would it be a good idea for brands to collaborate in order to engage with people and encourage more business to come in for marketing brands?
I think I wouldn't limit that to marketing. That word collaboration will be a key word going forward. There'll be lots of mergers and acquisitions. There are lots of collaborative partnerships. Lots of companies will feel, I can't do it alone and I need to collaborate with someone. There may be certain synergies lying around tech companies, good business models, logistics companies, financial institutions. They can all come together and play a new role in a new organization or a new setup. When I say new organization, I'm not talking about a company, but I'm talking about a new entity. Uh, However you want to call it, it doesn't matter. But that collaboration will definitely come in, and that's something that we need to keep our eyes uh, and ears open to, and embrace that new reality, that we need to get together to do certain things across the supply chain.
Thank you. We have another question. This is from Saminder. Uh, it reads, we have to be optimistic during this period, but there will be challenges. So how do we deal with bonded optimism or confidence with realism? What is your view on that? So that's how do we deal with bounded optimism or confidence with realism?
Okay, so as always, Saminda comes with very, very difficult questions to answer. Thank you for that question. But I think, uh, as I said, we might have to replace "or" with "and." That's a very powerful statement, I think. Uh, Replace "or" with "and." Uh, Earlier, we were thinking about, can I do this or this? But the new reality will be, can I do this and this together, right? And then comes the discussion of what proportions and what balance. Uh, at the same time, you manage and keep your enthusiasm and your optimism. Don't lose focus on the ground realities. But don't dictate your future strategy based on today's ground realities, because everyone's talking about doom and gloom and everyone's talking about today, right? So that's the balance that we need to have, right? Crisis mode, we take certain measures to in defense to minimize the impact of the crisis, but at the same time, a rebound plan, the 5 P's that I mentioned earlier, can we look at it and can we work on those projects that will position us differently in the future? So my reaction to that is "or" versus "and," and I would say "and" is a better way to go forward.
Thank you, Dusty. All right, we have another question. This is about the human resources management. Uh, the question reads, functioning in the company. So it reads, the internal changes of the company and the process is mainly driven by human resources. Do you think that Sri Lankan HR profession is ready to handle the change process that they will face within many organizations?
I think I would answer that question a little differently. That is, we, as a company, we are quite used to volatility. We are quite used to adversity. And if you look at, I mean, barely 1 year ago, uh, today is 16th, I think it was 21st. Last year, we had Easter bombings. And we have come through a 30-year-old war, which was very agonizing and which was very painful for everyone. So our ability to respond to changes, compared to some of the very stable countries like Switzerland or Italy or these countries, I think our resilience and ability to come back is very high. So I think that along with the kind of talent we have in organizations, the HR community, uh, they will be able to get through this. But I think, as I said, the HR community needs to transform themselves first to the new reality, because if we start preaching about the old reality and how do you, because the biggest question, if you ask someone today, uh, when when will this be normal again, right? uh, when will we come back to normalcy? when can we come back to normal? I mean, people are basically asking the question, how can we go back to December? How can we go back to October and November? How can we go back to our old world? But the question is, the old world, there is a shift. There is a inflection point. There is a there is a clean break that has happened, and some things will be new. So if HR community can articulate this, can understand this, visualize this, and say, look, the new reality in the future is this, then by transforming, they can take the lead in transforming teams and organizations. That's what I feel.
All right. Thanks, Dusty. That's very apt advice. Uh, there are two questions. One question is with regard to startups, and the other is with regard to tourism. So I was wondering, and both questions are asking what your advice and recommendations would be to revive and help these industries, both startups and the tourism industry. What is your view on that?
I think I will first start with startups. This is my view or my limited opinion. There might be new opportunities for startups, but I think it has to be built on a very solid model, because a lot of people are now thinking the next best thing is to get into grocery deliveries or deliveries of some sort. How do I do that, and how do I collect some money? Um, that type of startups. But I think if you look at, with this inflection point and with this change, there'll be lots of new opportunities coming. I think there was a curve that was drawn, the highly affected industries versus industries that will thrive during this situation. So in this break point, can we find some solid opportunities that will cater to some real needs of people? I think there are some opportunities, and some people will really think about, here is a very good time for me to take a call from my corporate life and say it's enough. I want to do something on my own. And those people will have chances to collaborate with others, big companies, right? To do certain startups or collaborative partnerships. So I think we can be hopeful and we can be optimistic about it, but so long you find a very solid business model. The second question is about travel, trade, and tourism. I am hopeful. Again, my reaction is, we have come through a 30-year-old war, and we have come through a lot of adversities, and there is a section of people who are wanting to get out. Moment things are somewhat under control, they want to get out and they want to enjoy. So I think no sooner people feel secure that this disease has gone away, I think people will travel, and till then we'll have to find some ways of keeping ourselves busy in the tourism sector. Initially, it might be local tourists, which will later be replaced by the international tourists. First wave will be who like to take some chances and risks, and then the others. But I think it should take a new shape and come back to some type of new balance.
Thank you, Dusty. There's a really interesting question with regard to supply chain that I'd like to put forward to you. It reads, basically, it talks about how supply chains are still old school in Sri Lanka. Processes aren't automated, and engineers are still technicians. So how do we transform without the fundamentals in a situation like this?
Yeah, indeed. Not to say that other questions were not interesting. This is actually quite relevant, I would say. I think if you look at supply chains, the limited knowledge that I have and what we are exposed to, we are scratching the surface of our supply chains, and we are at a very infancy level in terms of supply chain sophistication. So therefore, I think there is a lot of room for upskilling and reskilling of our supply chain professionals, which is a need. And slowly, I think the supply chain norms and the technology is integrating to a digital supply chain with more information, with more visibility upstream and downstream, and more accountability so that you can understand the supply chain risks better and you can mitigate them. So this is a scientific approach. Now, to a certain extent, our professionals have learned it through experience. And of course, there are now degrees and other things that are coming up to produce supply chain professionals. But there is a huge vacuum in terms of skills and competencies in supply chain management. And those are not which you can just gain for 1 year and say, I have it. No, those are evolving trends. And I think you need to keep at it and make sure that you're updated constantly and reskill and upskill yourself. Yes. Jeremy, are there any more questions? Geet, are there any more questions? I can't see Jeremy. Maybe he has some connection issues from home.
Actually, there's no questions, sir. Yeah.
Okay, all right. So I think then in the absence of Jeremy, I like to say thank you to all of you. And next Thursday, it will be Atik and Crystal who will talk about the trends and the real feel of our people. They're doing a massive survey across thousands of people. So you'll have some super insights about what people are thinking about right now and what they think about the future. So I'll leave it to Atik and Crystal. And so I like to say thank you very much for your time, and Ayubowan.
Thanks, Dusty. Sorry about that. My connection dropped.
No worries.
Yes. So we'll have another webinar next week, next Thursday, and we want to welcome all of you to come for that. And last but not least, I would like to thank all our partners who have been very supportive of this cause and the webinar series that we've been doing. So that is Irfan and his team at IQ, Atik, Crystal, and the Peppercube team, Banura, Dilanjan, Shinali, Varsha.
I think we lost Jeremy again. So thank you, Jeremy, for hosting the call. And thank you, everyone, for joining. And good evening to all of you. Thank you very much.